Halt! Quick! March!
So I'd like to welcome everyone officially to the Sterling Volunteer Fire Company's 50th anniversary celebration this evening. My name is David Short. I am currently serving as the chief of the Volunteer Fire Company, and I am proud to be here tonight and be in front of this group, this very auspicious group of distinguished guests, members, and current members past and present. Before we get started this evening, we have a couple distinguished guests here that have asked to come up and make a quick presentation. It's one of our partners in county government. Supervisor Corinne Saines would like to come up and say a few words.
Thank you. Actually, Supervisor Volpe, if you want to join me. Well, I'm just honored for your invitation to come and join you guys tonight, so congratulations, but quick, brief words. I'd like to present this plaque on behalf of all the Sterling residents to a Sterling Volunteer Fire Company for reaching 50 years of loyal and dedicated service to our communities. Thank you for providing high-quality protection to our citizens, businesses, and visitors. In 1996, you started off as a single station and then became the first multi-station company in Loudoun County. Now we have 150 volunteers dedicating a significant portion of their time each week to serve our residents. I want to thank each and every one of you, as well as those who have served since 1966. Thank you for answering the call. Thank you for being selfless volunteers in our community. Your sacrifice each time that you go out to work for the health and well-being of others. Firemen are to be appreciated and honored at every possible moment. Thank you again to the Sterling Volunteer Fire Company for your long-standing years of community service. And so with that, I'd like to present you with this plaque.
Thank you very much. Very nice. Thank you very much, Supervisor Saints. Thank you. I'd like just to say again, thank you to our partners in county government. These 50 years would not have been possible without the support from our county government past and present. Thank you very much. On to our guest speaker for this evening, and we're very proud to introduce this gentleman. I'm going to read through his quick bio here. Dr. Dennis O'Neill, he's the Deputy Fire Administrator of the United States Fire Academy. Dr. Dennis O'Neill, Deputy Fire Administrator of the United States Fire Administration, was named in this position in May of 2015. He's responsible for managing all the United States Fire Administration's facilities, data, and public education programs and training activities at the National Emergency Training Center, or up in Emmitsburg, Maryland. He joined the Jersey City Fire Department in 1971 and rose through the ranks from firefighter to deputy chief and then acting chief in 1995. He's led a uniformed force of 620 firefighters and officers, and he spent his entire time in the street as a line fire officer up in Jersey City. Dr. O'Neill was appointed the superintendent of the National Fire Academy in 1995 and has completed a Bachelor of Science degree from the New Jersey City University in 1976, a master's degree of public administration from Fairleigh Dickinson University in 1978, and a doctorate of education degree from New York University in 1990. He has taught the master and doctorate programs of education in New York University for 5 years and has written numerous articles in the field of education. Beginning on September 12th, the day after September 11th, he led the United States Fire Administration's team at the World Trade Center, working behind the scenes to help the New York City Fire Department reestablish their systems of command, control, and on-site communications. Again, in 2005, he was sent to Atlanta, Georgia, to help with the in-processing, training, and dispatch of over 4,000 firefighters there to assist in the response to Hurricane Katrina. In March of 2015, Dr. O'Neill was awarded the James O. Page EMS Achievement Award from the International Association of Fire Chiefs EMS section. This award honors those who demonstrate professionalism, a drive for excellence, and exemplary performance and leadership. In April 2015, the Congressional Fire Service Institute awarded Dr. O'Neill with the CFSI Motorola Solutions Mason Langford Fire Service Leadership Award. This award recognizes individuals who have been proactive at the local, state, and federal government levels to help improve fire emergency services and life safety issues. We're very proud to have such a distinguished gentleman with both local and federal government experience helping us celebrate tonight. So Dr. Dennis O'Neill, welcome.
Hi, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction, Chief. I'm surprised at how well you read my mother's handwriting. Good job. I bring you congratulations from Secretary of Homeland Security Jay Johnson, Federal Emergency Management Administrator Craig Fugate, and the United States Fire Administrator Ernie Mitchell on your 50th anniversary, and of course, all the men and women of the United States Fire Administration. We're very proud of your service. We're very happy to be here tonight. I want to thank Chief Bill Graham and Chief David Short for inviting me here tonight. It's simply wonderful to be here. That Burl Jones guy sitting here over here, he and I worked together at FEMA, and that's really how I came down. And but all of these men that I've just mentioned are leaders in the fire and emergency services, and they're tremendous supporters of the United States Fire Administration and the National Fire Academy. And I rely on them and another small handful of leaders in the country to kind of guide me through the information that sometimes I don't get. These men tell me the truth when I need to know the truth. Now, Burl and I come from New York City. I'm from actually Jersey City, directly across the river. It's about 1,200 yards away from New York City, separated by the Holland Tunnel. And it's a pretty tough area to grow up in, and it's noted for its politics. I often say that Jersey City is the home of the honest politician. But if you fly over that area in a helicopter and you look down, you'll see that the Statue of Liberty is actually in Jersey City. I don't care what these lying New Yorkers tell you. And but Burl and I grew up in an area where it's pretty tough politically, and I know there's a lot going on in politics today. But where we come from, your best friend will look you in the eye and stab you in the chest. Election day is a holy day of obligation. I'll give you a minute. And the patron saint of politics is Judas. And there's a story that was written in a book called The Politicians. It was written by a man named Tommy Smith, who was the mayor of Jersey City. And he tells a story about a guy named Barney Doyle. And Barney Doyle was a man that came over from Ireland. He had a third-grade education. He was a D's, Dems, and Does guys. But if you had a dirty, sleazy, rotten, sneaky job to do, Barney Doyle was your guy. And he was hooked in with the ins in Jersey City. We don't have two political parties in Jersey City. We have two Democratic parties, the ins and the outs. And Barney worked for the ins, and the ins just got elected out of office, so the outs were on their way in office, and they were very, very worried that Barney Doyle would turn state's evidence against them and spill the beans. So they had to give him a job to protect them. They had to give him a job that would last longer than 4 years so that the new outs would be back in office. And there was only one job in Jersey City that lasted longer than 4 years, and that was the superintendent of weights and measures. And that was a 5-year appointment in the Jersey City government. And so the mayor decided he's going to appoint him to this job, lock him into a civil service job. And the mayor got up before made a press conference, and of course it was all just radio and newspapers in those days. And he said, "Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I'm going to appoint the next superintendent of weights and measures in Jersey City. This man is going to make sure that when you go to the grocery store that butcher's not going to have his thumb on the scale. And when you buy a quart of milk for your kids, you're going to get full measure of that quart of milk. And if you buy a ton of coal to heat your home or a gallon of oil to heat your home, no one is going to cheat you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to announce the next superintendent of weights and measures for Jersey City, the Honorable Barney Doyle." So Barney Doyle comes walking out on the stage. Yeah, give him a hand. I'm about 3 drinks behind that table. So Barney Doyle comes walking out, and he's, thanking the mayor and thanking the press and thanking everybody for being there. And of course, the press knows what Barney Doyle is. He's just a political hack. So he's sitting there, and he said, "Well, is there any questions?" And one of the paper reporters raised their hand and said, "Hey, Barney, how many ounces in a pound?" He says, "Give me a break. I just got the job." Well, I have to tell you, I almost didn't make it here tonight. All of you in the fire and emergency services know how fragile life is. 1 minute you're here, boom, next minute you're gone. And I almost didn't make it here tonight. Last weekend, my wife and I were driving to my niece's house. We live in Gettysburg. They live in Allentown, Pennsylvania, where my wife grew up. And we drove out to Allentown to see my niece's new baby. We do like every other family, bringing gifts, taking pictures and everything. And at the end, we got in the car, we're on our way home, and I needed to get gas. And I pulled into one of those big gas stations in Pennsylvania. They're called Sheets. They have like 20 gas pumps outside, you know what I'm talking about? And they have fast food on the inside and gas on the outside. You can get gas in both places, right? And so I start filling up the car, and my wife said, "Well, I'm going to go get some coffee." So I said, "Oh, good idea." So she hops out of the car to get the coffee, and I finish filling up the car, and I'm waiting, and she's nowhere to be found. So I go in the store, and I look over at the coffee. She's not there. She's over in the corner with this guy, this big guy with a red apron and a hat on, and she's talking to him, but she has her hand on his arm. And I don't say anything. So I go over and I get the coffee, I fill up the coffee, I turn, I look, she's still talking to this guy. I go up, I pay for the coffee, and I said, she's still talking to him. I turned around and said, Jan, come on, we got to get going. She says, oh, okay. She reaches up, puts her arms around this guy, and gives him a big kiss. So I don't say anything. We get out, get in the car, pull out on Route 78 going westbound. I'm doing the minimum speed in Pennsylvania, 85, over in the right-hand lane. I looked at her and I said, what was that all about? She said, what? I said, the guy with the hat and the apron. Oh, she said, that was Eddie Makar. She said, Eddie and I dated in high school. As a matter of fact, we were quite an item. And Eddie Makar took me to the prom. And after graduation, he got drafted in the Army, and like you did, and I went off to nursing school. And when Eddie came back from the Army, he went to work for his uncle, who owned a gas station on that property. And Eddie worked for him all those years, and finally the uncle decided he had enough, he's going to retire, and he sold out to the Big Sheets company. And the deal was, as part of the deal, was that as long as Eddie wanted a job, the Sheets company had to give him a full-time job. And Eddie is the second assistant night manager of the gas station. I'm feeling pretty good. I said, you're pretty lucky you married me. Because if you married Eddie Makar, you'd be the wife of the second assistant night manager of a gas station in Allentown, Pennsylvania. She said, if I married Eddie Makar, he'd be the deputy fire administrator. So you almost had Eddie Makar here tonight, and he's not that funny. So, well, I have to tell you that I'm pretty jealous of the firefighters in the room, the men and women, the officers and the men and women. I love being a firefighter, every day of it. And it would be dangerous for the chiefs of the department here to offer me a job just to be a member of the fire department. That's all I want to be, just a junior firefighter. I don't want to be in charge of anything. I don't want to be responsible for anything. All I want to do is get off the rig, turn to the lieutenant, and say, what do you want me to do? So that's the job you do every day. And since I'm jealous of you, members of the fire department, I'm not here to talk about you tonight. I'm here to talk to your spouses and your significant others. I want to talk to you, people who have to deal with them on a day-to-day basis, the people who mean the most to you, the ones who are so proud of you about what you've accomplished. This 50th anniversary is pretty special. And America relies on its volunteer fire service more than most people realize. These are the rough numbers. About 75 to 80% of American citizens are protected by the volunteer fire service. And that's pretty remarkable in an industrialized nation like the United States. Most countries have a complete federal nationalized fire service, but in America, we rely on our volunteers. You're part of a cooperative relationship with Loudoun County and other surrounding counties, Fairfax County, all of these, Prince William County, and it's a pretty remarkable system when you think about it. Now, this secret may be out. Some of you may have heard, I know where we are tonight, but there's an election coming up in November. And I know that no matter who's running for office, they all have their opinion about what's wrong with the federal government and who's going to fix what, and they're up and down. And there's too much of something, there's not enough of something, you name it. And I suppose that it would be a very, very boring election if someone said, I'm going to run for office and I'm not going to change anything. And but Sterling here is a local government. And local government is really where the rubber meets the road. Local government is often referred to as the crucible of democracy. And I'd ask you tonight to just think about your lives here in a democratic America and how lucky we all are, despite all the screaming and the shouting that you see on the news shows on television. I don't know if you realize this, but this year, according to the World Health Organization, 125,000 children will die from the measles. And there's nobody in this room that knows anybody that's had the measles in the last 35 years. The average American citizen uses between 80 and 100 gallons of water a day. Now, I know, where's Chief Scott? How much does a gallon of water weigh? 8.5. Just checking here. Okay. I thought he was going to give me that Barney Doyle answer. You know, I just got the job. That means that a family of 4 gets 1 ton of water delivered to their house and shipped out of their house every single day. Did you ever think about that? Look at the water on your table. Everybody's drinking water. When was the last time you ever worried about whether the water you're drinking is safe? When was the last time you went to a food store and worried about the food that you purchased, whether it was safe to eat or not? When was the last time you heard of somebody's Social Security check being late? When was the last time you ever heard of anyone in this country who couldn't get health care? Now, I'm not talking about what you hear on the news and all those people. Who do you know in your family or who you love that couldn't get health care in this country if they were seriously ill? More United States citizens have been married to a Kardashian than have died of Ebola. You can look that up. And I guarantee you this, and I know you don't think about it, right now someone somewhere in America is in trouble. They need help. They're in an accident, they're in a fire, they're having a heart attack, and all they have to do is pick up the phone and dial 911. They don't have to speak English. They could be 2 or 3 years old. In 2 to 3 minutes, all sorts of people, highly trained people with all the best equipment, will be responding with lights and sirens to help them. And fire departments in the United States respond to 23 million emergencies a year. Just fire and emergency services, 23 million emergencies a year. Right here in Sterling, you're responding to about 4,000 of those out of the 23 million. How many countries around the world do you think that you'd have that? Sterling has assisted in the response to Hurricane Katrina and the events of 9/11, and their dedication knows no bounds. You're part of a very remarkable system. The Sterling Volunteer Fire Company is in the worst day of your life business. They help people when their lives are turned upside down. When there's no one else to turn to, they call the fire department. And it was the author, Kurt Vonnegut, who wrote Slaughterhouse 5, who said, "I can think of no more stirring symbol of man's humanity to man than the fire engine." And he could have added police cars and ambulances as well. And only one more statement would make it correct. These men and women of Sterling Volunteer Fire Department that are here tonight. These courageous people and the families who support them. Unfortunately, we know that people from all over the world were held transfixed, witnessing firsthand the tragedies in Orlando, San Bernardino, Moore, Oklahoma, Newtown, Connecticut, Aurora, Colorado, and now going on in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge. It seems that every week there's a disaster, wildland fires in California, a hurricane, and the actions of police and fire and EMS at these horrendous acts of terrorism and tragic disasters are forever imprinted in the hearts and minds of Americans everywhere. Despite all the sadness, it's they who show all of us what is good and right about American society. In hundreds of acts, in thousands of dangerous places, without regard for their own safety, these officers and firefighters and medics assure Americans that no amount of evil will ever overcome America's collective good. But what you already know, and what most of America doesn't know, is that what happened in those places on one day happens every day, all over the United States, including the Sterling Volunteer Fire Department. One emergency at a time. 23 million fire department responses a year. And it's these people in our emergency services who stand on the DMZ between a civil society and chaos. And there's a difference between bravery and courage. Bravery is a singular act, and it's sometimes done without much thought. Courage, on the other hand, is facing a danger when you know full well the odds, and you still do it. And this is the kind of work that the men and women of the Sterling Volunteer Fire Department do. Some have nothing to do with fires or medical emergencies or terrorism, but they are acts of courage nonetheless. And to those here tonight who aren't in the fire service, let me assure you that the media will never convey the differences that they will make in the lives of others, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And while they will pretty soon shrug their shoulders as another day at the office, to the strangers that they help, their efforts will be remembered forever. And they will have that kind of impact on people's lives. Firefighters in Sterling act without regard to race or religion or national origin. No one will determine whether the people they save are rich or poor, Republicans or Democrats. They will do something before anyone takes the time to see on which side of the tracks these people were born on, who they pray to, whether they pay their taxes, or if they have a criminal record. Firefighters are special people. They seek to serve the highest pinnacle of service to humanity. They don't ask, they serve. They don't talk, they act. They don't try to analyze the angles, and they never think about the odds. These are the people who provide for our safety in America. Not just these people here tonight, but their colleagues as well. And their first act of courage doesn't start at a fire with lights and sirens. Their first act of courage begins when they get up in the morning and put on that uniform and badge. And they do it every day, all of them. And it's not always what they do that makes them everyday heroes. It's knowing full well what they might have to do. They have a very simple job description. They're expected to be in the wrong place at the wrong time with the right stuff. And to those among us, myself included, who get up in the morning and don't have to put on that uniform and badge, I would respectfully ask you to consider something. To those who provide for the public safety, there's a sweetness to life that those who are protected will never know. And that's what these men and women of Sterling know, one day at a time, and that the rest of you will never know. That's courage. And when talking about courage, there was a very famous speech given on October 25th, 1415, a little over 600 years ago. And in the Catholic faith, October 25th is the feast of St. Crispian. And on that day, during the 100 Years' War between France and England, King Henry V of England was leading his soldiers in a battle against the French in a place called Agincourt. And of course, in those days, only men were soldiers. And it was going to be a very, very tough battle. King Henry V and his soldiers were in France. They had no backup. They knew that many soldiers on both sides would make the supreme sacrifice, and King Henry and his troops knew it. There were many soldiers in King Henry's force that were running away because they were afraid. And King Henry spoke to those heroes who were going to stay with him and fight. And to my mind, King Henry was talking to the Sterling Volunteer Fire Department. Here's how Shakespeare wrote about it. This day is called the Feast of St. Crispian, and he that outlives this day and comes safe home will stand taller when the day is named, and his rouse at the name of St. Crispian. He that lives this day and sees old age will yearly on the vigil feast his neighbors and say, tomorrow is St. Crispian. And he will strip his sleeve and show his scars and say, these wounds I had on Crispian's day. Old men will forget, yet all shall be forgot, but he'll remember what feats he did that day. And all of our names will be as familiar as household words. And this story the good man shall teach his son, and Crispian's day will never go by from today to the end of the world, when we in it will be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. And gentlemen in England who are now in bed shall curse themselves that they were not with us, and hold their manhoods cheap when all of us talk about who fought on St. Crispian's Day. And tonight, I want to tell you how much America appreciates everything that every one of you do. The people you help, the lives you change, the people you work with, and your families and your loved ones who are so proud of you and what you do. They too shall remember and honor you tonight and on Crispian's Day as well. And I'd like to close. I know a lot of times you really don't think that you have that kind of an influence on people's lives. And I want to tell you that you do. And no one needs more encouragement today than the men and women coming up in the fire and emergency services, especially the volunteer services. And it's a story about a man named Walter. Today, the press takes great effort to separate the war from the warrior. That whether you agree with our government's policies on the war or not, the men and women who bear arms in our name always deserve our support. But it was not always so. In the late 60s and 70s, the media and the public confused the war and the warrior. And the soldiers coming home were not treated as well. And there's a story about one soldier that came home, and he went up to his local school to sign up for college. And it was a period called add drop. Many of you understand what I'm taking. That's where you take 1 week course. You're in the course for the first week. The professor is really hard. It's a lot of work. You don't want to work that hard. So you run down to the admissions office and you try to drop that course and add another one. You want to take an easy course, an easy A, like art appreciation. I can see your faces. You did this a lot. You did this a lot, yeah. So the soldier went to the admissions office, and it was a room probably maybe half the size of this room, and it was packed with students. They were all waving paper in their hand. And there was no line. It was a mob scene. And there were 6 people up behind a table, and they were taking one student at a time looking at their paperwork. And if there was one thing wrong on the paperwork, they sent him back out into the crowd. You had to fix it. If the paperwork was perfect, they had a big master list. There was no computers in those days. A big master list of courses. And if the course was open, you could swap out. If it wasn't, sorry, you got to work hard. And the soldier was watching this, and he kind of worked his way up to the beginning up to the table. And this middle-aged man, Walter, turned around and he said, "What do you want, kid?" And the soldier said, "Well, I want to sign up for school." And Walter said, "You can't sign up for school. This is add drop. You should have signed up for school a long time ago." "Well, I didn't." "Well, did you take the SAT exams?" And the soldier said, "No." And Walter said, "Well, did you even apply to come into the school?" And the soldier said, "No." Walter said, "I'm sorry, kid. You should have done this months ago." And the soldier said, "Well, I couldn't. I was in the Army. I was overseas. I just got home." And Walter said, "When did you get home?" Soldier said, 3 days ago. And Walter turned around, he picked up a piece of paper, he handed it to him, he said, "Here you go, kid, fill it out, take whatever you want." And the soldier said, I don't know what to take, never been to college. Walter said, "Give me the paper back." He said, "I'll fill it out. These are all the best professors in the college. You're going to have a great time here. These classes are all full, nobody can get in, but I'm going to approve you to get into class." And the soldier signed the check, and he started school the next day. And now you all know how I got into college. Well, yeah. Without ever taking an SAT or filling out an application. And I often wonder in my life what would have been like had I got one of the other cranks at the table that night. What would have happened to me? About 15 years later, I was at a party. And I saw Walter. And I walked up to him and I told him the story. He said to me, "Dennis, I don't remember you." I said, "Walter, I never forgot you. Your fire and emergency services, my fire and emergency services needs a bunch of Walters. And tonight, I need you to be a Walter for somebody. Would you do that?" Thanks. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. O'Neill. As we move forward through tonight's presentations, I'd like to introduce the first of 4 speakers who are going to kind of refresh our memory of some stories from the past of the Sterling Volunteer Fire Company. And I'd like to start off with past chief. Come on up. Joe Martin, I'm sorry. It's been a long day. Sorry. Past Chief Joe Martin. I'm sorry.
Can you all hear me? Okay. You know, have you ever been in the kitchen and thought about something that was in the bedroom, and you walked in the bedroom and you forgot what you were in there for? Well, psychologists say that when you go through a doorway, that your mind is going into a different realm, different atmosphere. And that's why you forget, momentarily. Yesterday, I was out and I got stuck in a revolving door and almost lost my mind. So with that, bear with me. I'm 79, and I only have a few minutes, and I hope I get things right. The Sterling Park community saw a need for fire protection. And the Sterling Park Rescue Squad and JCs got together and thought it would be a good idea to start a fire department. So one evening in 1965, one of the JCs came to my house and asked if I would like to be a member of the fire department that they were going to start. And I said, well, sure. And they said, do you have any past experience? And I said, some. I used to be with the New Jersey Forest Fire Service. And they said, that's great. Well, we're going to have a meeting next week in the old library on Sterling Boulevard, and we're going to discuss things. And that's how it started. Members of the rescue squad and guys off the street like myself from the community. Now, at that time, there was only Section 1, and Section 2 was being built. And on my court, Ironwood Court, I was the only house that was occupied or even built. So after that meeting, things got going, and we applied for our charter, and it was granted in August of 1966. Now, we needed a place to stay. So Dick Gray, where are you, Dick? Dick Gray over here. If you can stand. There he is. Dick Gray obtained the old barn, the old Edwards barn, for us from the Sterling Park Development Corporation. And that was our first home. So we had to go in there and clean out the pigeon poop, and stuff like that. And we had two carpenters, Glenn Hawkins and Red Quick, who made a little day room office for us. We had a boot rack, a coat rack, and things like that out in the where the cows came in. That was our engine bay. Quick story. The boots were over our head, coats and helmets hanging up from the rack. We had some juniors, and one of them was Tommy Owens. And they went out on a call, and while they were gone, Tommy had a brand new pair of sneakers, and I nailed them to the floor. Then, about a week later, we had another call. I went to grab my boots from the top of the rack, and they were full of bluestone, about 20 pounds each. But even in the barn, as primitive as it was, we always hung out. Somebody was always there. So Dick and several others contacted the Civil Defense, and that's like Homeland Security now for you young people. We obtained a tanker, a small engine, and a small brush truck. And we also contacted Hillside, Maryland, and we bought for $3,500. Dick arranged for the financing, from the bank so we could go and hawk right away. To buy this 1950 American LaFrance pumper, open cab, a real tricky transmission that if you missed a gear, you had to come to a complete stop and start all over again. It had a 150-gallon booster tank. So somebody with a bright idea like Irv Chilcote or one of the other paid men decided to put 2 pre-connects on it. So we had 1 minute and 30 seconds of water. And let me tell you, if we could get our foot in the door, we knocked it down. And we did it aggressively because we only had 1 minute and 30 seconds to do it. And when we got our first twins, the Fords that had 500 gallons of water, we thought we died and went to heaven. We didn't have radios, plectrons, or anything like that at that time. We obtained radios from Civil Defense for the apparatus. And Rosie Gray, Dick's wife, when we would receive a call, he would call her, fire board would call her, and then she would call us on the telephone, and that's how we responded. And then we were able to get a siren from someplace, and we put it up in a pole by the shopping center, and we had a siren to tell us that there was a call. We didn't have self-contained breathing apparatus at the time. We had MSA canister masks, where you took the tape off the bottom and you breathed that hot air. I remember we had a structural fire down on Sterling Boulevard. The first time I wore a Scott pack in a fire, I was sitting on the living room floor, breathing out of the tank, and I go, man, this is nice. We were given turnout gear. We were really poor. I mean, we were so poor, we didn't have anything to throw it out in the window, a pot. So we received turnout gear that were hand-me-downs from Jack Hartley, Bethesda Chevy Chase Rescue Squad. And he supplied boots, coats, and helmets. And then another one of Irv Chilcote's ideas, he got together with the guy that was in charge of all the gear in Arlington County. So he would tell Irv where they were going to throw the gear that wasn't usable anymore, what dumpsters. And we'd go, Irv would tell us, we'd go dumpster diving down Arlington and get some more gear. And that's how it went. But we started to grow, and we grew exponentially. And we separated from the rescue squad and went on our own. We had all kinds of fundraising activities, bingo, fund drive, filling swimming pools with a tanker. And oh yes, we drove Loudoun County Water Authority nuts because they're always going around trying to see where we were getting the water. And we were hiding from them and they were looking for us. And we made a lot of money filling swimming pools. And we didn't pay for any money. There's nobody from Loudoun here, is there? So we even watered trees down at Meadows Farm. The only Meadows Farm that was there was by the old bank on Route 7. They're going to Herndon. Going to Great Falls that way on Route 7. So we did anything and everything to make a buck. And we always paid our bills, too. So shortly after that, we started to get some paid men in that were paid men in other jurisdictions. And even though we were a volunteer fire department, we always ran operations like paid professionals. Always. Right from the very beginning. We picked the brains of these paid firemen like Dave Bell from Arlington, Irv Chilcote from Arlington, Billy Allen from Fairfax, Wayne Preddy from D.C., and of course, I had wildland fire experience from New Jersey Forest Fire Service, and that's why they call me Smoke to this day. We started a junior fire program. You had to be 16 years old and maintain a B average in school. And some of our successful juniors really made it to the top. Started right here in Sterling Park and went to the top. Guys like Tommy Owens, Chief of Fairfax City, and now Chief of Frederick. Ernie Little, Captain of Prince William County. Jim Kaiser, Captain of Arlington. Al Dutton, Battalion Chief of Washington, D.C. And firefighters Danny Jones and Timmy Callahan. And John Patton was a major with the Sheriff's Department. But all of these people started when they were kids. We brought them along, and they grew to be fine young men. One quick story you don't know. Wayne Blake, how he got started. He was with his dad. It was in the wintertime. He was over by the lake, by the golf course in Sterling. 2 kids fell through the ice. His dad tied a rope around his waist. Wayne crawled out on the ice, pulled those 2 kids out of the ice, and he was hooked right from the start. And we were forward thinking too, because we had a young lady join our department. She's sitting over there, Andrea Barty, our first female firefighter. I have to tell you a quick story. We were on a house fire along Sully Road, Route 28. It was a grow house for marijuana. So they were in there, I was out in front, and I saw this person climb out of the dormer onto the roof. And I looked up and it was Andrea. So I hollered up to her and I said, "Andrea, what's the matter?" She said, "I'm feeling sick, Chief." I said, "Did you throw up yet?" She goes, "No, Chief." I said, "Well, get back in there and do your overhaul job, and when I see you puking out the window, then I'll let you come out." But that's the way we are. We were tough. We were trained well. We went over to Dulles for our first pit fires and all got burnt like crazy because we had those old metal helmets, canvas coats, 3/4 boots, and it wasn't good. But we learned from all of those things, and we never backed out of a fire situation. One of the things that always went on in our department was you never laid the nozzle down, because if you did, you'd never get it again because somebody always had it and went inside. So you guarded that nozzle with your life. But that's the way we were, and that's the way we fought fire, because the way you train is the way you fight fire. and we trained hard. We trained all the time. And those guys, the professionals from the other jurisdictions, brought their knowledge out, and we used it. In the time I have left, we responded to a couple of situations. One was the Hurricane Agnes. And I believe that was in '72. And we put a boat and motor in the hose bed of one of the engines. And we went along the road rescuing people. So we got a call. There was 3 guys trapped in a dump trunk over on 606 near Dulles. So we went over there, and the water was that deep in front of the truck. We went over there, and we found those guys, got them out, and brought them to shore. And just as we did that, here came a bobtail tractor from a tractor trailer down the road. So we stopped them. And when we stopped them, this woman jumped out. And she was screaming, so we went over to her. Come to find out, this guy, she was stuck in the water up on Sully Road, someplace way up east of where we were. Car drowned it out. He picked her up, was going to take her to a place where she could make a phone call. Instead of that, he kept her in the truck, and he was going to molest her. So when he came to us, there was no place to go, and that's why she jumped out. So we took a couple of spanner wrenches and a Halligan bar and held him until the sheriff's department could get there and arrest him. So that's one of the things we did there. But during Hurricane Agnes, some of us didn't see the station for 3 days. We were working down in Broad Run Farms, and it was pretty tricky. The second real nasty call we were on a recovery operation at Mount Weather when TWA Flight 514 hit the mountain. It was foggy, rainy, and then sometime during the night, it started to sleet, and then it started to snow. There were people going around with rods, sticking them in the ground where they would see a body part. And then guys like Wayne and Bill Allen would go around with a Stokes basket, with a body bag and a Stokes basket, and pick up those parts. So that's what we went through. But from what we started with to what we have now, it's truly been a blessing. And it is all because of people like you all out there that have carried on the tradition of the volunteer fire department, doing without, being away from your families, going the extra mile. It's all because of you that we are where we are today. And I'm proud to stand here and look at you all and remember what it looked like when we started to what it looks like now. Give yourselves a big round of applause because you truly deserve it, and you are wonderful people. Now, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce one of our juniors, Tommy Owens.
Joseph.
Good evening. I'm been asked to cover the next block of time in Sterling's history and share some of the highlights. And so, picking up where Joe left off, we obviously got to a point where those of us that were raised in a barn got to escape into the new Sterling station. And the interesting development of that and the formation of the safety center had to do with the forward thinking of the leadership of Sterling Fire and Rescue at that time. It was leadership that was scared to death that we couldn't pay our bills. And the idea of taking on a mortgage for a new fire station was one of the scariest things that faced this organization, with the rescue squad needing to leave the library and the fire department needing to leave the barn. So the innovative approach was to form a dummy corporation known as the Sterling Safety Center Incorporated, and all of the buildings were built and mortgaged in the name of a dummy outfit. It's a board of directors that consists of 5 members of the fire company and 5 members of the rescue squad. And the idea was, if we couldn't raise enough money to pay the bills and the banks came to get us, they couldn't take the fire trucks or the ambulances because we were just tenants. Very forward-thinking and innovative in 1971. The reality of the fire station grew, and fortunately, working together with the rescue squad, we were able to pay the bills, and we entered a period that I call the growth years, from 80 to 90. And I call it the growth years because that's when the Sterling community started to take off with its development. Cluster communities developed inside the original Sterling Park. The Sugar Land Run subdivision expanded. The community of Countryside began to develop and was well underway. Cascade community had begun construction. Supporting retail services in numerous shopping centers began to follow. And Dulles Airport was making Sterling an international business center, all during a very rapid growth period of about 10 to 12 years. This growth obviously translated into increased demand for fire rescue services, and Sterling began to experience significant jumps in its call volume on an annual basis. North of Route 7, with Sugar Land and Cascades and Countryside growing, we needed to do something to provide another point of service delivery. The number of calls that we were answering north of Route 7 became significant enough. And again, the forward thinking of the leadership at the time is they made a partnership with the old Citgo gas station, and we were able to relocate the reserve engine to operate out of an old service bay of what was then Citgo. Active fires in Sugar Land Run were becoming a common occurrence. In fact, those of us from that area, if you wanted to see a fire, you were probably going to Sugar Land at the time, and Irv called it the Bronx of Sterling, but that's where we saw a lot of our work at that point. The Safety Center developed the permanent Sugar Land station thereafter to house 1 engine and 1 ambulance from Sterling Rescue, and these units were operated by the volunteers living in our communities north of Route 7. The 80s brought upgrades to our apparatus, and for the first time the fleet began to order fully enclosed cab pumpers to increase firefighter safety during response, and it's that time in our history that marked the end of the era of riding the back step. Career staffing in Loudon was something that Sterling sought immediately the day after we failed to respond on 1 call. Joe talked about how we were brought up running this organization like it was a career department. And it only took 1 scratch for us to say it's time to add staff support during the weekday in Sterling. We went to the county. Loudoun County ran us out of Leesburg on a rail. They sent us to the Volunteer Fire Rescue Association. I remember one trip to one of the meetings that Joe led us with Halligan bars and axe handles to try to make our case to the volunteer leadership of the county that Sterling was a different community and we needed to evolve to a combination service. In '74, the association supported and the county agreed that Sterling could hire its own career personnel, and we hired our first career firefighter that we paid for with our own raised money as a volunteer corporation. That evolution continued until Sterling was fully funding the cost of salary and benefits for 3 career firefighters operating out of Station 11. And then Arcola Volunteer Fire Company got to a point where they needed daytime staff support. They went to the county. The county agreed to hire its first career firefighters as Loudoun County firefighters. And at that time, they understood that they had to then assume the cost for the career personnel in Sterling. And shortly thereafter, we were able to convince the county to add to the budget 3 career firefighters to staff the Sugarland station Monday through Friday during the week. So that's how this combination system evolved. Sterling invented the combination relationship here in Loudoun County. We showed the rest of the organizations how you have a need for both, and you have to be successful by having mutual support for both. And it has certainly worked very well. There came a time in 1986 where our call volume had reached a point where there was an interesting dynamic in play, and we were still relying evenings and weekends on volunteers responding to the station from home in order to get the apparatus out on the street. What we realized was our membership was remaining rather flat. The members who lived very close to the station were handling most of the work, and we were burning them out. And the members that lived far from the station rarely made the rig, and they were frustrated. So it came time for a bold decision in Sterling's history. And the decision was made at that point that we needed to begin staffing the station with mandatory duty crews. Volunteers in our company who were basically required that you're going to be assigned to a duty crew, you're going to stay in the station overnight when it's your weeknight as the shift rotated, and when your shift hit a Saturday or a Sunday, you were there for the full 24-hour tour. Pretty controversial for an all-volunteer organization to take that bold step. But we felt is what was necessary to serve the community at that point in time. Our members responding from the station were no longer tactically effective, and we were reaching a point where this balance of burning out some members and frustrating others really created an inequity in the shared workload that we needed to better manage across our membership. So a 7-crew rotating shift schedule to staff the station overnight on the weeknights and all 24 hours on the weekend was created. It was put through the organization. There were in-house modifications made to the Sterling station to accommodate increased bunkroom space to house the crews, and the decision was made to move forward, certainly not without controversy. We did have a handful of members that quit. They quit claiming, I'm a volunteer, and you can't require me to stay at the station overnight. The leadership stood firm. Sterling has never allowed, quote, being a volunteer to stand in the way of what is needed to serve this community. And I hope you never will. The Station 11 renovation then took place in a formal fashion, and again took place based on the vision of our original leaders. Because when the original Station 11 was built, the leadership that put that facility in place saw the future and said, we need to build this building today so that it can be expanded to meet growing service demands in the future. So the one-story station was actually engineered structurally to support the addition of a second floor. There were knockout panels put in the rear of the apparatus room so that the station could be pushed out to the rear, very cost-effectively to accommodate the growth that they saw this community facing in the future. And if you look at Station 11 today, the expansion and renovation of that station is exactly what they envisioned 20 years prior. That's the kind of forward-thinking leadership and visionaries we had that started this organization. So we added the second floor living quarters. We renovated the first floor. We expanded the apparatus room to accommodate the additional service areas. Looking back, I believe it's the duty crew system that is what has preserved and perpetuated the strength of the volunteer staffing in Sterling. 29 years later, duty crew staffing is alive and well in Sterling and still very effective in its service delivery. It has saved this county from needing 24-hour career staffing at Station 11 and 18 over this past 29 years, and duty crew staffing has saved the taxpayers of this county millions and millions of dollars by avoiding the cost of additional career staffing overnight and on the weekends. The lessons from our history for today's members and future leaders: never forget the two most important core values this organization was raised on. Sterling Fire does what is necessary to always put service to the community first. It always has. I hope it always will. And secondly, quote, being a volunteer is never an acceptable excuse when providing emergency services in any form. You have inherited a legacy of an organization that has always been committed to outstanding service, an organization that has never been afraid to take a stand for what's right in Sterling and in Loudoun County, an organization that's invented the positive volunteer career relationship in Loudoun County, and an organization that has always been proactive in meeting the service needs of our community. Your responsibility is to preserve and build upon this legacy and continue to move the Sterling Fire Company forward. I'm a proud member, life member, and congratulate this organization on 50 years of exceptional service. Okay. I think I'm supposed to call Chief Mickey Buchanan forward. Unless he ran away. Oh no, Mickey's here. Okay.
All right, so I get to bring you into the 90s. Hopefully we're getting to a point here where most of the people in the room have been born now. So, just saying, you know. The growth they were talking about in the 80s continued into the 90s. The population in Sterling, Loudoun County doubled between 1990 and 2000. And the company took on a lot of changes to keep up with this growth. But in the tradition and everything, one thing that the older group of guys that were worried about is that they didn't want to sacrifice what we had in Sterling Park just because the area was growing. So our primary concern was to keep the service in Sterling Park, but to branch out and grow the company to grow into the new areas that were being built. Several changes in the corporation and stuff occurred in the 1990s to make us more fitting into the era. And first thing was the name change. We had been the Sterling Park Volunteer Fire Department, and now our area was growing, and we wanted to be more representative of the area that we covered, and it was changed to the Sterling Volunteer Fire Company. We had the Sugarland Station and the Sterling Station, and when the new Station 18 was built, the decision was made for the North Sterling and the South Sterling Safety Centers, again, to be more reflective of the area that we were covered. And we also, when Station 18 was opened up in 1997, we transferred all of our business offices and logistics from Station 11 to Station 18 because it was a bigger facility and basically became our corporate address. Tommy talked about that we had career staff at 11 and 18 during the day, but that didn't, at that time, didn't include holidays. So we were covering holidays too because the career staff was off on holidays. And we tried to cover the hours between 6 in the morning till 6 at night, but the career staff only worked 10-hour shifts. So we had staggered hours. The guys at 11 worked from 6 to 1600, and the guys at 18 worked from 0800 to 1800, so that we could cover that gap of 12 hours where most of the volunteers were out working. But again, a lot of changes in infrastructure, apparatus, membership, and the identity of the company. Some of the milestones and stuff that we accomplished during that time, as Tommy mentioned, we did a renovation at Station 11. We moved into that and became operational into that in 1990. The ladder truck that we were using at the time, the Seagrave, was approaching 20 years of service, and so we started looking at speccing out a new ladder truck. There was some talk at that time about trying to get a tower, but the guy that was chief, Tommy Owens, I think it was, said, "We're not getting a tower, you know, straight truck all the way, straight truck all the way." So Dave Bell was head of the apparatus committee, and he was working diligently on specking out a ladder truck. Well, lo and behold, a few months into Tommy's chiefdom, he got a job offer in Frederick County, Virginia, I think, and was going to have to step down as chief and move out to the area. And Chief Kaiser was elected to take his place, and I'm not sure if it was the same meeting or the next meeting, probably the same meeting. As Tommy was walking out the door, Dave Bell made a motion that we buy a tower, and it passed, and so hence Tower 11 showed up in 1991. So again, one of two ladder companies in the county. Us and Leesburg were the only two that have ladder companies. We sold our old truck to Purcellville, hence the beginning of Truck 2, which made the third ladder truck in the county. And now we're on our second tower. Another thing we were in the process of placing in 1990 was we needed a new wagon for 11, and again, being forward-thinking and innovative of Sterling, Pierce had come out with this new fire truck called the Pierce Javelin. It was, top of the line, front wheel. It looked real good on paper, and I'm sure they worked well for somebody. But we entered into an agreement or a contract. It was us, Centerville in Fairfax County, and Catlett, I think, in Prince William County, that we were going to do a group purchase and get 3 of these Javelins. The thing come in, it was nice. You had a football field, up front to sit in. The motor was in the back, under the hose bed. What normally goes there? Water. So the water tank was located behind the cab, between the cab and the pump, in an upright position. But the cab was wide open. It was front-wheel drive. It was probably one of the first fire trucks that we had with all the computerized, you're starting into computerized motors and all this stuff. And so, we were at the top of the world. We had this new top-of-the-line Javelin fire truck. Well, you would think that they would make a fire truck to withstand water, but this thing, every time it would rain, something would happen. The transmission would quit. We had trouble after trouble after trouble, and you hear how front-wheel drive cars do so well in snow. Front-wheel drive fire trucks, not so well. And especially the ramp at 11, of course, was at an incline. You could get out fine, but you weren't going to back in if there was a lot of snow. We put chains on the front of the fire truck to try to get it to go. But again, top-of-the-line fire truck. And we fought that battle probably for about, I think it was like 6 years, and then we finally decided, this ain't going to work in Sterling. So, we were doing everything, talking about lemon laws, everything else, how much money we'd spent on this thing trying to keep it on the road. And, of course, in Virginia, a custom-made fire truck isn't covered under the lemon laws. But I do believe what we decided to do in 96, end of 96, and received in 97, is that we finally got Pierce to take it back, and we did what they call a glider kit. So they would take the Javelin back, and they would take the motor, the transmission, the pump, and the vital organs, as you would, out of the Javelin, and put it into a different fire truck and send it back to us. So we flatbedded it up there. And like I said, where that water tank was, it was a nice big open white spot. And I want to say that somebody in our company had something to do with making signs or labels or print or something. I think there were 2 big lemons on the side of it when it left Virginia, headed for Wisconsin. And had 2 big yellow lemons on the side of it, all the way for the trip, all the way back. But it came back in 1997 as a Pierce Arrow, and that's another story. And while we're talking about the Javelin, we'll keep into the same story. So everybody knows how tight it is over at Station 11 and everything. Another innovation that a lot of departments were starting to get was roll-up doors. So we had decided that on the replacement for the Javelin that we were going to order roll-up doors. And it came in right before a monthly meeting. And so for some reason they kept this thing hidden until the night of the monthly meeting. And we show up for the monthly meeting at Station 11, and the thing was covered up, and we're going in, and we're going, what's going on here? So, everybody wants to come up, and, they want to see the new fire truck. So, they uncover it, and we look and see, you could hear the jaws drop. Here's this nice blue stripe down the back of the pumper. We're going, shake your head and look, because it had the silver roll-up doors, but then there was red fire truck in between. Well, all the red spots, had white Scotch light on it. The front had white Scotch light on it, but here's this blue intermixed, and we're going. And I want to say that it was probably Bill Roman was ready to hang somebody, and we're going, what in the world? Well, because I think it was you. I remember that night. But, and the apparatus committee tried to convince us, well, we got up there, and, it had white Scotch light on it, and you couldn't see it on the silver, so we went with the blue. And it wasn't a good night, but we finally agreed to live with it for a little while and see what came out of it. So, needless to say, we kept the blue stripe. But that was the story behind the blue stripe. Again, like I said, we got the new tower in '91, and Wagon 11 was placed in service. We had the career staff up there during the day, and like I said, the calls were getting more and more. We were getting more calls. The rescue squad was getting slammed. And at that time, we were not responding for EMS calls. I think it would have to go, at the time, it had to go to the third due ambulance before our fire truck was even dispatched. So we had 6 career EMTs sitting there during the day, and there would be an EMS call down the street, heart attack or something else. And at that time, before '95, Ashburn didn't have an ambulance, so the ambulances were coming from Fairfax County, Dulles Airport, if Sterling was out on a call. So in 1992, we got our EMS non-transport license and petitioned the county to start dispatching us, and originally they would only dispatch on ALS calls. In 1993, we bought a life safety education trailer to enhance that program. In 1994, we bought the first purpose-built canteen unit. We purchased it used from Bethesda Chevy Chase Rescue Squad. 1995, we placed Wagon 11, and then in anticipation of the new Station 18, which opened in 1997, we did some modifications to the Sugarland station to where we could start putting volunteers there at night. And was the Alpha Crew? We started the Alpha Crew. Still was running with 7 crews. If you look at old Station 18 in Sugarland, if you look at the bay over on the far side, you can see where the walls were. We built 2 bunk rooms and an office, and it was the Alpha Crew for a while under Captain Lindstrom. Was people just signing up and staying, and then we eventually built duty crews up. So by the time that the actual Station 18 opened up in Cascades, we had 14 duty crews, and 2 duty crews on a night covering both stations. Then, like I said, in 1997, the Cascades station opened up, and then in 1999, we did the duty crew uniforms, and the last thing that we did in '99 was the company voted to buy or start the purchase of 2 Quints. And at that point, I'll turn it over to President Johnny Bischoff to bring us into the 2000s.
Well, I was warned I have about 8 minutes to cover about 16 years worth of service. So we'll get right into it. That's exactly right, thank you. The years 2000 through today never really reached the point of equilibrium. Sterling Fire, as well as Loudoun County as a whole, often seemed to be facing new challenges year after year. It was a constant repetition. Something new faced us, something new detrimental. These challenges are very important to highlight as they show the growth pains we faced over the years, which created the company in which we are today. Now, Loudoun County as a whole has seen more than 120% increase in population from 2000 to today. In the year 2000, Loudoun County had a population of about 170,000 citizens. Today, according to the 2015 census, we're pushing 375, most of which is in eastern Loudoun County. By mid-2000s, our proffer system, a major funding stream for us, all went away due to changes at state level. This greatly impacted us financially. We thought for sure we only have 3, maybe 4 more years before we got to close these doors. Our membership was facing greater training requirements and higher call volumes. This led us to burnout and retention issues. As you heard from Chief Buchanan, in the middle of 1997, 98, we had opened our fire station 618 in Cascades. By the start of 2000, we were only 1.5 to 2 years into properly staffing that station. And the staffing strains were very much existing at the time. We were really concerned about what we were going to do. We only had about a membership, a roll of about 70 at that time. The thought was that this is going to kill us. Trying to staff 2 stations, a ladder truck, a command, keep the service up for the community, what are we going to do? In early 2000s, we also took a leap and invested $1.2 million into new quints and a new quint concept, Quint 611 and Quint 618. At the SVFC Banquet in 2001, Chief Short, at the time President Short, had a video presentation. It was great. Slideshow and everything, music behind it. The Van Halen song, Right Now, was playing, implying that we as a company needed to act right now. And for those of you younger members that don't know Van Halen, see me on the dance floor. The presentation ended with a slide that said, proffers are going away, training requirements are getting stronger, and we just made the first payment on a $1.2 million apparatus loan. I'm not going to lie to you, it was probably the most depressing banquet I've ever attended. We thought, we're not going to make this. We have 3, maybe 4 more years, and that's it, folks. But yet, through drive and determination, here we still stand today. Within Sterling Fire, none of these challenges slowed us down. They never did. In early 2003, seeing the challenges ahead, we launched an internal strategy which focused on 2 things, membership and money. We called it M&Ms. Financially, we pushed to seek donors from corporations, revamped our fund drive, and implemented new fund drive strategies to drive new money into the company. In 2003, we took a random community feedback sampling and realized that the community no longer realized that we were still volunteers. For a volunteer organization, for a 501c3, that's a bad thing from your community. We looked professional in our uniforms. We trained to a high level, and we operated the same. The community could not tell us apart. We needed to do something to link back into the community. With this in mind, we launched the Sterling 10K Fire Chase and 911 Fun Run, which started in 2003 and is still going today strong, 14 years later. We also launched the hosting of fire department-themed kids' birthday parties and Photos with Santa, which is an extension of our community outreach and volunteer system awareness. When people come up to us, they know we're volunteers. We make sure of it. Both programs continue today and raise great support for our company. With regard to membership, we advertised all over the place for members. We streamlined our onboarding process, making it easier for new members to come in. Also, we reinvigorated the Mike McPadden membership committee style of saying, and you guys know it, who's on the membership committee? I could use a little more from the back of the room. We all are. We all are on the membership committee. We are all spokesmen for this company. These efforts brought new funding streams into the company and raised our membership from a roster of around 70 to over 150 members operationally, and administratively from around 12 admin members to over 40, which it is today. Community growth not only impacted our membership, but our apparatus fleet as well. We drastically changed our fleet between the year 2000 and today due to increased call volume and the need to keep apparatus on the road. We were literally running the wheels off our trucks. In this time frame, 2000 to today, we purchased and in some cases later rotated out 2 Quints in 2000, 2 Pierce engines in 2004, a new Seagrave tower ladder in 2006, a new Quint in 2008, a new engine in 2010, and 2 more new engines just last year to keep up with the need of the community. The changes we've seen throughout this time have not only been within Loudoun County. Sterling Fire has had the opportunity to respond and show our skills on a state level and on a national stage. On September 11, 2001, Fire Station 18, Rescue Station 25 was used as Loudoun's deployment point for deploying units into Fairfax and to Arlington and directly to the Pentagon. Sterling Fire had over 30 firefighters at the Pentagon over a 3-day period and also provided staffing for units in Arlington and in Fairfax during this situation. Also within the state of Virginia, in the summer of 2003, Sterling Fire, along with LCFR and Sterling Rescue Squad, provided support to Colonial Heights for flooding in that area just outside of Richmond. Following the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina impacting the Gulf Coast in 2005, Sterling Fire could not stand by and do nothing. We organized members and linked into the Salvation Army's rebuild program. We sent members down to Mississippi for a solid week of rebuilding homes in Pearlington, Mississippi, and we managed their fire department for a week so that their members could finally have a break. Now today, within Sterling Fire, we have over 150 operational members and over 40 administrative members. Along with our LCFR partners, we're responding to nearly 4,500 calls for service per year. Our population continues to grow within the county, specifically within Sterling's first due. We have more homes, more commercial buildings, and more traffic to contend with. We just accepted delivery of a new Engine 618 as our fleet continues to evolve with the community's needs. Fire Station 624 just opened within the past 2 years, and we're currently working through the same staffing strains that we saw back in 2000. Looking back over our history, we've seen many changes, both internally and externally. We've often felt that we are just years from closing the doors and turning our backs. We've been down this road before, folks. When this feeling does occur, and it will, I urge you all to look at our history and let it help define our future. We have proven, and you heard most of it tonight, we have proven time and time again that we, as an organization, have the intelligence, the drive, and the dedication to make it another 50 years. With that, I thank you, and I'd like to turn it over to the video that we're going to illustrate now.
Ladies and gentlemen, what we'd like to ask right now, pipes and drums are on the stage. We'd like to offer 1 moment of silence. This is a night of celebration tonight. It's 50 years, and that's a big deal. But we also want to take a moment to remember the fallen. And not just to remember in a sad way, but to honor. For all fire, police, first responders, and military. So if everybody could please raise a glass, stand if you like, and join us as we give a moment
To those who couldn't be with us here tonight,
I would like to take this time to recognize, as been spoken about so much this evening, about the leadership that has brought this company to where it is today. And I think it's so special tonight, and I'm so proud and honored that we have so many past chiefs and past presidents that are here with us today. So if possible, can I get all the past chiefs and past presidents to stand and be recognized? I'd also like to take a moment to recognize a few of our partners that have been with us throughout the entire time to help ensure our success. I would be remiss, and it would just be a crime not to mention, I know, is Chief Andrews still here? Chief Andrews from the Sterling Volunteer Rescue Squad. As Chief Joe Martin mentioned, the Sterling Volunteer Rescue Squad was instrumental in getting the volunteer fire company organized, and without them and our sister organization, we wouldn't be where we're at today. I also like to take a moment and thank this small contingent, but representative of a much larger organization, the LCFR, our brothers and sisters from LCFR, that have been our day side to our night side, keeping the Sterling community safe. Thank you very much for your partnership throughout all the years. And also, I'd like to take a moment to say, you can't say the Sterling Volunteer Fire Company, and you can't say the Sterling Volunteer Fire Company apparatus without saying Rocky Keplinger. Rocky's been instrumental in keeping our trucks on the road for more than 20 years. Thank you, Rocky. I also like to thank, I think Supervisor Volpe's still here. I know Supervisor Sains had to leave, but thank you to our partners in county government. We appreciate your support. And my last thanks, I think we all owe a great thanks to the Sterling Volunteer Fire Company Social Committee, Vi Cadane, Christy Barricat. I think you're hiding back here somewhere. Thank you very much. if I could ask everyone for the last toast, the closeout this evening, I have to make one last toast, and then I get to cut this cake with a fire axe. Get the YouTube cameras going. All right. So just a toast. One last time, raise our glasses. I think what's been said so many times by our leaders that have come before us here, this is a toast to all of us, for everyone in this room tonight, members both current and past, spouses, family, significant others, and all of our partner organizations. All of you are part of our success of the Sterling Volunteer Fire Company. Let me leave you with this final charge. Let us here today honor those that come before us with the service we provide tomorrow. Cheers. All right, and then I have to ceremonially cut this cake. Here we go. No idea what I'm doing here.
March. Off to the tap, or do you guys want to stay watch?
Amazing Grace.
Stay watch? Let's do this. For those that are leaving, we'll move off to the tap. Right? Tap.